Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming down this evening. It's good to see lots of smiley faces. Ollie asked me a few weeks ago whether I would come down and talk for one of these shed talks. My background is very much as a technologist. Been talking and writing about technology for more years than I care to remember. That's me, at David McClelland. If you want to follow me on Facebook or Twitter, then that's your prerogative. Here's some stuff that I do right now. I talk about it, I write about it. I work a lot with startups in particular. And there's a couple of things that I've done. Tech Entrepreneurs Week, I ran some panels, hosted that, and spoke to a lot of people who were working very much in the London tech startup scene. Also, things that really interest me are the fact that we talk about clusters of tech startups, about the different flavour that each one of those has, and even at a European level, you start looking at Berlin, you look at London, you look at different places in the UK, you look at Israel, for example, the different types of startups, the different types of technologies that incubate in those areas for really interesting reasons, whether there's a military background in that area, as is often the case in Israel, for example, whether there's a huge creative aspect, as we have in London here, and even bits around the UK. We were talking earlier on about the games industry and why Dundee and why Newcastle are so big as well. That stuff absolutely fascinates me. And then this thing, almost at the bottom, the Gadget Show Live British Inventors Project. That's where I last caught up with Ollie. So Gadget Show, everyone knows a Gadget Show, big UK television show. And what they wanted to do to the live show was to bring in, I guess, a bit of heart and soul to it, because it can be very easy to go to these big consumer tech shows and see Microsoft and Sony and Panasonic, and every year you're seeing the same stuff again and again. And from a business point of view, I guess they wanted to keep it fresh. They wanted to bring in some new blood and get people coming back year after year. I like to think from a kind of spiritual point of view, they wanted to be seen to be supporting startups, to incubate, to inspire people. So they ran a competition for the British Inventor of the Year, and they had, they did it last year, they did it this year, 200 entries into that. Whittled it down to a short list of 20 finalists. We had them all at the show. Now, the first year that I did it, the brief was, David, there's these crazy guys, and they've got these inventions that are really quite cool. So get them up on stage, and they might be a little bit awkward, to be honest with you, but concentrate on the inventions, because they're really cool, and we've chosen them. And after the first day of chatting with them, it became apparent that really was not the case. The products were kind of okay, but it was the people that were absolutely fascinating. And as a journalist, you just kind of surround it. They say, right, everyone's an inventor, right? Everyone has an idea. Everyone has a challenge that they find a way of overcoming, right? However, the difference between you and I, well, actually, not between you, I hope, between everyone else who walks down the street and me and the people who are up on the stage and the people who are here, is that they've gone and done something about it. They've got something about their psyche or something about the commitment to their project that they've taken that next step forward. And they've said, right, I'm going to convince people to buy into this. I'm going to convince people, hopefully, to go and buy it. And that takes a certain sort of commitment to do that. And that was what was really interesting, what those eureka moments were, what their challenges were, how they raised the capital, because a lot of these were literally garden shed industries. I know it's shocking stuff, isn't it, sir? One thing that I think almost all of those startups did have in common was crowdfunding. Now, the first year I did it, CrowdShed wasn't around, but it was Kickstarter and Indiegogo. I'm allowed to mention other platforms here, of course. I just have done. We'll blur that out. But when we were putting together the show for this year, in recognition of the fact that crowdfunding was a really hot topic, I wanted to get something there so that people really could come along, and if they've got an idea, they can learn what to do next. And what I really like about what CrowdShed does is that it's not just about, hey, let's raise some money for you. It's about the whole business development. And you say you're a business, you're kind of in the real world. I completely get that. So yeah, Ollie came down, did some stuff for that. Very, very grateful for that. And I'm also a startup survivor. I might get onto that later on. 12 minutes, I think I'm about 10 into that, and I'm not even past the first slide. All about me. What do you know? Right, so I'm a technologist. It's very easy for me to talk about technology, but not everyone, and I know your business doesn't just do technology. So what I wanted to talk about quickly was how technology is supporting startups, how technology is supporting new business. And I think there are three things really that are really working for me at the moment. In fact, I probably would go so far as to say I don't think there's been a better time in many areas than right now to be a startup, to be starting a business, for three very good reasons. Now, I've talked about crowdfunding, this spirit of philanthropy, and obviously it's about raising some capital to get your ideas on their legs. And with platforms and businesses like CrowdShed and other ones are available as well. This stuff wasn't around 5 or 6 years ago in the accessible manner that it is right now, and that's amazing. But you look at it from the consumer point of view, it's become quite fashionable to invest, to have a look at and go, oh, that's a good idea, $20, yeah, I might do that, what's the worst that can happen? That's a really cool thing to do. And as a journalist looking for stories, looking for what's next, it's bringing it all into one place. I can see the future in a few scrolls on my computer screen. That's amazing. So it's not just about the money though, it's about using these platforms to refine your message. And again, something that I find again and again and again with startups, with people who've had a brilliant idea right at the beginning, is that they've got this widget and it can do this, and actually it can do that, and it can do all of these wonderful things, but then you try and sell that, you try and tell that story, and it becomes watered down, it becomes confusing. So it's about really focusing in on the key points of your message, because this is a great feedback mechanism. You've got a community that you build up around you. You've got a feedback mechanism, and you can try stuff, A/B testing, what does not work. And hey, if the first time goes wrong, you can come back and do it again and improve and iterate without spending tens and hundreds of thousands of pounds in the process of doing so. Your backers become your community, and community is important because let's say you do get through it, let's say you've actually got a really good prototype, you've got your first 10,000 units of whatever widget it is out there, and you're looking to go to the next round, all of a sudden you've got a community, you've got a product, you've got tens of thousands of people who are already got your product in their hands. They become your evangelists, okay? And that proposition to someone who's looking at investing at the next stage of your business, that's brilliant. People already like this. People are already engaged. People are trying to get their friends to buy it. That is so important when you're trying to sell your product on. Okay, crowdfunding, I think you've got that message. Social media. If there's a better tool for advertising your product than social media, I don't know what it is. And again, this is something that's really come into its own maybe over the last 5 or 6 years or so. Twitter. Different social networks have different modes of interaction. Facebook is your friends, okay? You can have Facebook pages, but that's another thing. But still, it's a very kind of personal level communication. Twitter changed my life. And, people who aren't tweeters, so what is Twitter all about? What is the point of it? And I quite happily stand there and say, Twitter changed my life. It's enabled me to muscle in to conversations, muscle into making connections with people who I didn't know before. Yet you've got to be a little bit ballsy with it, but it's a business. I'm a business. I'm a freelancer at the end of the day. If I don't go out looking for the work, I don't get paid. Same with your products. If you don't try and sell your product, no one's going to buy it. So Twitter is an incredible tool. Look at the next generation of products as well. Look at things like Periscope and Meerkat. These are live streaming tools. Periscope was a company that Twitter bought earlier this year, launched it just before South by Southwest, and it means that in a very kind of news, social kind of way, I could be sending this live stream right now to everyone on the internet, potentially. And they can send back their love or they can send back questions. It becomes a really interactive mode of communication. And the good thing about social media is that it's also a platform for your business in terms of not only getting your message out there, but in terms of support, in terms, again, of building up your community. And businesses that have embraced social media very well, Commonwealth Bank in Australia, in the space of about 18 months, I think it was about 2.5 years, went from being the lowest rank in terms of customer satisfaction in Australia to being the highest rank because they invested quite heavily in a social media campaign that included just listening, getting social sentiment gauges out on Twitter, and then responding to it, kind of being on the front foot with it. The thing about social media is that and the thing about the technologies in the first place really is that you've got to meet them halfway. You know, social media isn't just going to happen around you. You've actually got to invest in it. Crowdfunding, as you know, a crowdfunding campaign isn't just going to happen. For that month when you're crowdfunding things happening, it's like a baby. And you've got to feed it, and you've got to change its nappy, and you've got to give it a little cuddle every now and then. Otherwise, well, let's not go there. But if you don't do that, it's not going to grow into a lovely, hopefully very healthy plant. Right, social. And that is about the tools. Now, I'm a startup survivor. I worked for a startup called Butterfly Software based in a barn in a garden centre in the outskirts of Maidenhead. Oh, all the glamour. Food was very good in the cafe next door, but it was really expensive, as most garden centres are. We were like a little software analytics company. We could not have survived were it not for the cloud. Okay. Now, going back to the 90s, when I first started my business, I worked for Reuters in a data centre in London, just opposite where the Millennium Dome is now. And it was a data centre about 10 floors high, filled with machines, filled with servers and everything else. And if we wanted just to spin up a new application, you know, a picture archive or a sausage trading application or something, it took weeks because there was all getting the machines in place, there was all the network infrastructure, there was making sure there was allowances for planning, installing the operating systems, getting the applications on there, getting specialists in who could install all of that. Just to get an application up and running took weeks, and it was quite an expensive procedure. You look at the cloud now. You can spin something up in about 5 or 10 minutes, and it will grow and it will shrink, and you're paying for what you use. So these tools enable you to be more agile, to get something up and running, and then if it doesn't work, to spin it back down again with minimal cost, because it's operational expenditure, it's not capital expenditure. You know, I'm going to do this for 3 months, it's not working, brilliant, we'll spin it down, we'll move on to something else. Whereas if you bought £30,000 worth of server hardware and you're hosting it in a data center somewhere, that's quite difficult to back down from. So that's kind of at a software level. Let's say you're doing physical stuff as well. 3D printing, brilliant. Now, people got really excited about 3D printing about 3 or 4 years or so ago. It's been around for 30 or so years. It's only in the last 4 or so years that it's become accessible. It's become cheap enough, less than £1,000. And you can see, and it looks quite cool, and they do all the rounds at the tech fairs, and you can buy them in Maplins now. If you are making stuff without a 3D printer, it's quite a long process. You know, you're having to get all the CAD diagrams together, all the STL files, send them off to someone who's going to make that injection mold it. Again, it's about reducing this iterative process. And if you can 3D print something there and then, you're cutting down that time immeasurably. Designers who I speak to, they love this, okay? There's still some challenges with 3D printing. We'll talk about that later on. I'm not a business mentor, but while I'm talking about technology, very quickly, I just want to talk about how a particular business model is disrupting all others at the moment. Facebook, Airbnb, Uber, Alibaba, we've all heard of them. They provoke emotions among some people, particularly those involved in the businesses that these guys have disrupted. Facebook is arguably the world's largest and most popular media company. Doesn't create any content itself. Airbnb, one of the world's most popular, largest hotel companies, doesn't own any property. Same with Uber, world's largest taxi firm, doesn't own a car. Alibaba is the world's most valuable retailer, yet carries no stock of its own. And it's all because it's peer-to-peer stuff, really. I mean, I've just started using a laundry app, okay? And this, I don't know where it sends my clothes. I don't know where it sends my shirts. All I know is that I've got an app on my phone. I say, can you come and collect my shirts tomorrow at 7 o'clock, between 7 and 8 o'clock? And they do, and they come back 2 days later. Okay, and I pay £2 a shirt. I'll give you a referral code if you like later on. They were started to be reached out to me a couple of years ago, and I go, really? Because I had, you know, the old ones that I phoned up. Because they've got an app, I use them now instead. It's about the same price, but because they've got an app, and I can literally on the train home go, oh yeah, brilliant, 7 o'clock tonight, 2 days later, and it's done. It's exactly the same business, exactly the same cost as another business that I phoned up. But because I can do it on an app, maybe that's just me, I don't know. P2P isn't everyone's cup of tea. Not everyone wants to engage with businesses at this level, but you've got to look at who your audience is. You know, if you're engaging predominantly with millennials or, you know, time-poor Generation Y people, then they're quite likely to have a good look at this stuff and to engage in it. If you're engaging primarily with older people, they value much more the personal communication. You know, I did a talk a few months ago now for investment bankers, people who look after high net worth individuals, and their modes of engagement are incredibly different to millennials and to Generation Ys, because they still do value the meet and greet. They value getting a PDF file by email and being able to look over it in their own time and come back in a couple of days. But the younger the audience, the very different modes of interaction. So whatever business you've got, then just think about who your audience is and how they like to consume your content and how they're going to take that on. What's actually going to get them on your side? Listen, I'm out of time. That's far more than 12 minutes. I can carry on talking forever. I'm David McClelland. Thank you very much indeed.